You may believe that your pain comes from your love, but I ask you to look deeper. The ache you feel, the longing to heal others, to bear their burdens, to mend what is broken in them, it does not emerge purely from compassion. It is not only light that drives this impulse, but also a shadow. I hid a wound, a secret pact made between your soul and the ghosts of your past. And unless you awaken to this truth, you will drown in the very waters you attempt to rescue others from. Let us begin with a simple but terrifying idea. The rescuer is often the one who is most in need of rescue. The empath, the healer, the selfless giver, they are not saints in the making. But often children of emotional neglect, survivors of deep emotional trauma, who learned to tether their value to the act of saving another. This is not love. This is addiction. This is the psyche attempting to resolve its primal wound through others. And the more unconscious this drive remains, the more destructive it becomes. You see, the empath archetype is not merely a noble role. It is a deeply dangerous one. It seduces you into forgetting yourself. It whispers the lie that your worth lies in how much suffering you can absorb, that love is synonymous with sacrifice, that to let someone go is to betray your purpose. And so you remain bound to them, drained by them, unraveling piece by piece, believing that you are strong enough to carry both your pain and theirs. But this is not strength. This is fragmentation. When you enter into a relationship where you constantly give and they constantly take, you are not loving them, you are reenacting a psychic drama that began long before they arrived. Somewhere in your early psychic development, a blueprint was forged. You became the caretaker, the one who had to attune to the emotional climate of others for survival. You learned that your needs were too much, that your emotions were inconvenient, that the only way to be loved was to abandon yourself, and now you call this empathy, but let us not mistake trauma bonding for love. Let us not confuse emotional fusion with connection. Love in its truest form does not require you to disappear. There is a dream I once interpreted from a patient who was tormented by this pattern. She found herself standing at the edge of a vast ocean, watching as someone she loved was drowning. She leapt into the water to save them, but the closer she swam, the more she realized they were made of shadows. And as she reached out, they dissolved into her body. She awoke choking, gasping, soaked in sweat. This is the fate of the empath, who is unconscious of their shadow. They do not rescue, they are consumed. The archetype of the savior is a seductive one, for it grants a sense of power to the powerless. To heal another becomes a way to bypass healing oneself, but the psyche cannot be fooled. It demands balance. It demands individuation, and when we abandon our own path to walk another's, we violate the sacred law of psychic integrity. The unconscious is not kind. When ignored, it will manifest in symptoms, in anxiety, in burnout, in inexplicable rage. It will scream through the body what the conscious mind refuses to hear. You are losing yourself. You are being eaten alive by a story that does not belong to you. But perhaps the most tragic illusion is this: the belief that you can save them, that your love will be enough to transform them. that if you stay long enough, bleed deep enough, cry hard enough, they will awaken. No, if they do not choose to awaken themselves, your sacrifice becomes martyrdom, not medicine. You are not their God. You are not their soul. You cannot overwrite their karma. You cannot rewrite their myth. This is not to say we are not connected. We are, but psychic responsibility is sacred. To carry another's destiny is to rob them of their soul's journey. To interfere too deeply in their suffering is to halt the very process that may one day save them, not through your intervention, but through their own descent. We cannot deprive others of their darkness without denying them their transformation. The empath must learn boundaries not as walls, but as sacred geometry, as the architecture of individuation. Boundaries do not block love, they refine it. They teach you to pour from the cup only when it overflows, never from your lifeblood. They remind you that self-sacrifice is holy only when it is conscious, not compulsive. I have seen the empath as the modern mystic, sensitive, porous, attuned to the invisible currents of emotion, often carrying more than they can articulate, but I have also seen them shattered, fragmented, lost in the emotional labyrinths of others, their dreams littered with dying animals, burning houses, screaming children. These are symbols of the self being annihilated. These are not spiritual visions. These are psychic cries for help. You cannot serve the collective if your individual self is in ruins. You cannot be a vessel if your center is hollow. The soul does not require you to bleed endlessly. It requires you to become whole. And sometimes wholeness demands walking away. There is a moment in every empath's life when they must face the great betrayal, the decision to choose themselves. It feels like death, like abandonment, like sin. But it is sacred. It is the first step toward reclaiming the self from the altar of false sacrifice. And here, in this crucible of decision, the shadow arises. It mocks, it accuses, it shows you all the faces you've left behind, all the people you believe you failed. But it is a trick. The shadow is not your enemy. It is your teacher. It is showing you the guilt you carry, the fear that you are unlovable, if not useful. It is urging you to integrate, not deny the part of you that longs to be chosen too. You must understand, the desire to heal is not wrong, but when it is rooted in compulsion, it becomes contamination. To offer your energy without consent, without limits, without consciousness, that is not divine. That is dangerous. You merge with the other, and in doing so, you lose your ego boundaries. You drown in the sea, forgetting that your own island is worth inhabiting. Do not confuse this with selfishness. To honor the self is to respect the soul. The self is not the enemy of love, it is the vessel through which authentic love can flow. Without the self, there is only enmeshment, and enmeshment is not intimacy. It is a psychic suffocation. I ask you now to consider, when did you first believe that saving others was your role? Trace it. Follow the thread. Was it a parent who could not regulate their emotion unless you became their therapist? Was it a partner who only offered love when you carried their weight? Was it a culture that praised martyrdom and punished individuality? These are not random patterns. They are psychic imprints. And unless brought to consciousness, they will govern your destiny like silent tyrants. You cannot save them. You were never meant to. You can love them, pray for them, offer truth, but you cannot descend into the underworld in their place. You cannot substitute your healing for theirs. That is not empathy. That is possession. That is the ego disguised as virtue. To truly love someone is to allow them the dignity of their own suffering, and to truly love yourself is to know when to walk away. Let this be your initiation. There is a secret pact made by many empaths. One they are rarely aware of. It is a vow whispered not in words, but in the wound itself. If I can just love them enough, they won't leave me. If I make myself essential, they will stay. If I absorb their pain, they will not abandon me the way I was once abandoned. This is not compassion. This is trauma's echo. And like all echoes, it distorts the truth. The further it travels, what you must come to see is this: the compulsion to save others is often a defense mechanism to avoid facing the terrifying emptiness within. It is easier to obsess over their wounds than to sit quietly with your own. It is easier to drown in their storms than to brave the silence of your own inner world. But the self, the true self, cannot be found in another's salvation. It can only be found by descending into your own depths. The unconscious demands confrontation. It does not heal through avoidance, and the empath who perpetually orbits around others, hoping to extract a sense of purpose, will ultimately become resentful, exhausted, and fragmented. Their life becomes a string of one-sided relationships where they are always the giver, always the listener, always the one holding the pain. But underneath it all is a secret longing. When will someone finally save me? But you see, no one can, not in the way you imagined, because what you truly long for is not another person's affection. It is your own presence. The presence you abandoned long ago in the name of being needed. You gave yourself away so early, so instinctively, that now in adulthood it feels unnatural to reclaim yourself. It feels wrong. It feels like betrayal. But it is not betrayal, it is rebirth. The archetype of the wounded healer emerges here. Chiron, pierced by a wound that could never heal, becomes the great teacher of medicine. But not because he escaped pain. He became a healer only by fully acknowledging that his wound would never leave him and learning how to transform that suffering into wisdom rather than a crutch. The empath must undergo this same alchemical transformation. You are not meant to be healed before you serve. You are meant to serve through your awareness of the wound, not by pretending it doesn't exist, but by no longer using others as substitutes for healing it. There is a paradox at the heart of empathy. To truly understand another's suffering, you must be open. But to remain open without losing yourself, you must also be rooted. This is what many empaths never learn. They mistake openness for availability, but availability without discernment is self-destruction. You were never meant to be an open wound for the world to bleed into. There must be form, there must be sacred structure. Just as the psyche has its architecture, the ego, the shadow the anima and animus, so too must your heart have boundaries. Without these, you become flooded. And when you are flooded, you are no longer helping. You are transmitting your chaos into the field. That is not healing. That is contagion. You must reclaim your center. When I speak of the center, I do not mean selfishness. I mean the axis around which your psychic life must revolve. Without this axis, you are thrown into the orbits of others, spinning endlessly in their chaos, mistaking their needs for your purpose. And the more you lose yourself in this, the more alien your own soul becomes. Do you remember what your soul feels like without them? That is a question most empaths cannot answer. Their sense of self has become so enmeshed in others that they mistake emotional fusion for connection. They feel needed and call it love. They feel useful and call it devotion. But love that demands you abandon your essence is not love. It is seduction by the shadow. Every time you say yes, when your body screams no, you fracture a little more. Every time you offer your energy without inner consent, you betray the self. And the self does not remain silent. It begins to rebel. It sabotages. It weeps through the dreams. It screams through the body. It will haunt you until you remember your name in dreams. I have seen this betrayal symbolized again and again. A house with no doors, a mirror that reflects no image, a child locked in a cellar. These are not mere symbols. They are psychic truths. The house is the self unguarded, unprotected. The mirror is the ego shattered, invisible. The child is the core, you abandoned in the basement of your own being. And so I ask, who are you? Without their pain, if this question terrifies you, you have your answer. You have made yourself a vessel for their suffering because your identity depends on it. But your soul is not here to be an emotional landfill. Your soul is here to become radiant in its fullness. You cannot do this while carrying the weight of 10 other lives. You were not built for that. Even Christ fell under the cross. I once worked with a woman whose dream revealed the truth more clearly than any words could. She dreamt she was dragging a cart up a steep mountain. Inside the cart were the people she loved, her partner, her children, her friends, all of them asleep. As she pulled, her feet began to bleed. Her back cracked, but she would not stop. Finally, she collapsed. When she turned back, the cart was empty. They had all disappeared. She had dragged an illusion. That is what happens when we take on the work of others. They may not ask it, but we offer it hoping it will buy us love, loyalty, permanence. But true connection cannot be earned through suffering. It must be mutual, reciprocal, energetically sovereign. If they are not awake enough to rise, then your descent will not save them. It will only bury you. So you must learn to say no, not from bitterness, but from sovereignty. No to the conversations that drain you. No to the entanglements that rob you of clarity. No to the roles you never consciously agreed to play. Each no is a yes to yourself. And that yes, when spoken with integrity, has the power to realign your entire life. I do not say this lightly. I know the guilt that comes with choosing the self. It is ancient, it is archetypal. The empath believes they must choose between being loved and being whole, but this is a false dichotomy. Love that demands your fragmentation is not love. It is bondage, and it must be cast into the fire. Individuation demands sacrifice, but not the kind you have been taught. Not the sacrifice of your essence, not the slow leak of your soul into the hands of the unready. The sacrifice is your fantasy, the fantasy that you can fix them, the fantasy that if you are good enough, needed enough, selfless enough, they will finally wake up. Let it be. The self is born in the ashes of fantasy. You must become ruthless in your discernment, not cruel, but clear. Compassion without clarity is chaos. You are not here to carry their karma. You are here to walk your path, and if they join you, it must be by choice, not by manipulation. If they awaken, it must be from within, not from your constant resuscitation. And yes, some may leave you. Some will accuse you. Some will say, you have changed. Let them project. Let them throw their pain into the wind. You no longer need to catch it. You are not their container. You are not their savior. You are not their scapegoat. You are your own soul. And that is sacred enough to not be afraid of solitude. In the void, the self is revealed. In the silence, the voice of your soul returns, and when it does, you will remember something astonishing. You never needed them to be whole. You only needed your own presence, your own love, your own light, and so you rise. The soul, once neglected, does not return with a whisper. It arrives with thunder. When you finally stop chasing others, when you stop leaking your essence into the open mouths of those who cannot feed themselves, something ancient begins to stir within you. It is not dramatic. It is not loud. It is quiet, but terrifying in its clarity. You begin to feel your own presence, and it is a presence unlike anything you have ever felt before. Not the anxious buzzing of caretaking, not the exhausted glow of being helpful. This presence is dense, sovereign, powerful. It asks nothing. It proves nothing. It simply is. This is the moment when the empath begins to awaken not to the suffering of others, but to their own divinity. And in this awakening, a new pain arises, a beautiful pain. It is the pain of realizing how long you have abandoned yourself, how long you have lived outside of your own body, how many tears you have shed for others while your own wounds remained untouched. But do not resist this grief. It is holy. It is the gate through which wholeness enters. The ego, conditioned by years of unconscious service to others, will resist this transition. It will whisper, you are being selfish, you are betraying them, you are leaving them behind. But these are not the words of truth. These are the echoes of a false identity, an identity that says your worth is measured by your ability to disappear for someone else's survival. But your soul was never meant to disappear. It was meant to shine. You must understand that healing others does not require you to be their mirror. It requires you to be your own flame. When you are lit from within, you become a light they can walk by, not a crutch. They collapse into And there is a world of difference between the two. The wounded empath becomes a sponge. The awakened empath becomes a beacon. In the old mythologies, the healer was never just one who removed pain. They were initiates, those who had walked through the underworld and returned with sacred fire. They understood that healing was not rescue, it was remembrance. They did not interfere with the soul's journey, they illuminated it. You are being called now to become such a healer, not the rescuer, but the mirror, not the martyr, but the mystic. To do this, you must confront the part of you that needs to be needed. This is the shadow of the empath. This is the serpent coiled beneath the surface of every yes you speak when you mean no. It is seductive. This identity, it tells you that you are kind, that you are spiritual, that you are selfless, but beneath it is fear. Fear that without being needed, you will not be loved. Fear that your inherent being is not enough. And this fear, until integrated, will poison even your most generous intentions. Let us turn inward now. What does your inner landscape reveal? Is it quiet, or does it echo with the noise of others' needs? Are your thoughts your own, or are they filled with calculations how to help them? Fix them, soothe them, keep them close. Do you even remember what you desire? Apart from their desires, most empaths do not know. They have been so attuned to the outer field that their inner world has become a mystery. But this mystery must now be explored. The path forward requires a journey into the interior, into the dark forest, into the hidden temple where your soul has been waiting not to be found, but to be reclaimed. You will not like all that you find there. You will find resentment, bitterness, envy. You will discover that parts of you hate the very people you love, hate them for how much they've taken, for how little they've seen you, and this will feel like sacrilege, but it is not, it is truth. And truth is the first step to liberation. When you acknowledge these shadow emotions, something miraculous happens. They begin to transform. Rage becomes clarity, grief becomes power, disgust becomes discernment, and you realize your capacity for love has not diminished. It has become refined. You no longer need to love through suffering. You can love through presence, through truth, through clean energy. And those who truly love you will feel the shift. They will rise to meet you, or they will fall away. But either way, you will remain whole, because now you have roots. The journey of individuation, the great task of becoming who you truly are, requires you to step out of all inherited roles. The role of the good daughter, the obedient partner, the spiritual helper, the selfless friend. These masks must be burned. They are not your face. They are fragments, personas, constructs built to protect the child who once had no voice. But now you have a voice. Speak with it. Say the unspeakable, I do not want to carry this. Say, I deserve to rest. Say, I will no longer dim my light for your comfort. And then watch what happens. Some will rage. Some will retreat. But others will awaken. Your authenticity will ignite their own, your self-possession will ripple into their field. This is the true healing. Do not fear the loneliness that comes with this path. It is not punishment. It is initiation. It is the soul clearing the space for true connection, for resonance, for relationships not built on guilt, need, or projection, but on mutuality, intimacy, and sacred sovereignty. You are not here to merge. You are here to meet, and meeting requires two whole beings, not one devouring the other. In dream symbolism, the flood often represents emotional overwhelm. The empath is often plagued by such dreams, tidal waves, drowning cities, broken dams. These are not random. They are messages from the unconscious. They are saying, contain your energy, build the dam, structure your flow. Without containment, your energy leaks. And where it leaks, it attracts the unhealed, the needy. The vampire archetype, yes, vampires are real, not with fangs, but with need. They sense your openness. They seek your light, but not to bask in it, to consume it. And if you do not protect yourself, you will mistake this feeding for love. You will feel important, special, irreplaceable, but you will also feel tired, confused, empty. That is not intimacy. That is emotional parasitism. Your aura is not a buffet. You must learn to shield, to say, this is mine, that is yours. To feel their pain without absorbing it. To listen without losing yourself. This is not cold. It is sacred skill. It is psychic hygiene. It is the very boundary that allows you to remain compassionate without becoming contaminated. And here is the deepest truth: you cannot save them because they are not yours to save. Each soul comes with its own curriculum, its own dark nights, its own awakenings. When you interfere too deeply, you interrupt this sacred design. You become a thief, not of their pain, but of their path. Let them fall. Let them rise. Love them in the falling, in the rising, in the silence in between. But stay on your path. If they join you, beautiful. If not, walk on. Because the greatest act of love is not sacrifice. It is self-realization. And a fully realized self rooted in wholeness is the greatest gift you can ever offer the world. Not your fixing, not your energy, not your time. You, fully alive, fully present, fully you. And that, my friend, is more than enough. The self is not static. It is a living mystery, emergent, luminous, born again and again, each time you shed an old mask. And perhaps this is why the empath's journey is so fraught with sorrow, because it demands so many deaths. The death of the Savior, the death of the martyr, the death of the invisible one who smiles through the ache. Each row you release leaves behind a hollow silence. But in that silence, something sacred stirs. It is not performance. It is not usefulness. It is not selflessness. It is you, untouched, divine, eternal. There will come a day when you no longer explain your no longer soften your truth, no longer twist your spirit to fit the container of another's wounding. You will look in the mirror not to see if you are lovable, but simply to witness you whole, present, breathing. And in that moment, something old within you will exhale. You were never too much. You were never too sensitive. You were never wrong for feeling everything. You simply needed to learn how to feel yourself first. So many of you confuse proximity with connection, but real connection does not require you to bleed. It does not require you to shrink. It does not demand that you become therapist, priest, savior, or sponge. Real connection is born in the space between the sacred distance where two sovereign souls meet without collapsing into one another. And this meeting is not always peaceful. Sometimes it is fire, sometimes it is mirror, sometimes it is the eruption of shadow confronting shadow. But when you are rooted in your own self, you do not fear this encounter. You do not run. You stand because you no longer fear being seen, and you no longer fear being left. To love without losing yourself is the greatest alchemy. It requires the strength to hold your shape in the face of their chaos. It requires the courage to say, I will not abandon me, even if you choose to abandon you. And this is where the false identity of the empath begins to crumble. Because now, your love is no longer contaminated by need. Now, it is clear, clean, fierce. You no longer offer your energy in exchange for safety. You offer it as a blessing, a radiance, a frequency. And those who are ready will feel it not as a life raft, but as a mirror, a sacred reflection of what they too can become. This is the moment you shift from being the empath to being the mystic. The mystic does not rescue, the mystic reminds, the mystic does not absorb, the mystic transmutes, the mystic does not collapse. The mystic beholds, you are no longer at the mercy of the emotional field. You are the calm in the storm, the flame in the dark, the quiet in the noise. And because of this, your presence itself becomes the medicine. But make no mistake, this path is not for the faint of heart. To awaken to your sovereignty is to lose the very identity that once kept you safe. It is to disappoint, to trigger, to be called selfish, arrogant, cold, and at times you will doubt, you will want to return to the comfort of being needed. You will ache for the illusion of safety, but you will not go back. Because once you taste the nectar of your own wholeness, dependence becomes bitter. There is a loneliness that accompanies awakening, a sacred loneliness, because now you no longer vibrate with the same frequency of the wounded. You are no longer magnetized to chaos. Your nervous system is no longer addicted to the highs and crashes of emotional codependency. You seek something quieter now, truer, something that does not require you to earn your place. And yes, this means some will fall away. Let them, bless them. Their journey continues. And so does yours. You have not failed them by choosing yourself. You have not failed them by refusing to be consumed. You have not failed them by walking away when your soul said, enough. That moment, that sacred moment when you walk away from what drains you, that is the moment the divine claps in reverence. That is the moment the old chains fall. That is the moment the self begins to sing, because you finally remembered you were never here to be the sacrifice. You were here to be the revelation, and now you become the one you needed all along. You sit with your own grief instead of fleeing into theirs. You hold your own heart instead of begging others to cradle it. You forgive yourself not for being broken, but forever believing you had to be. You become your own sanctuary, and in doing so, you no longer attract the ones who want to feed. You begin to call in the ones who can see, the ones who meet you soul to soul, not out of desperation, but out of devotion. You are no longer seduced by chaos, because peace no longer feels foreign. You are no longer addicted to suffering, because joy no longer feels unsafe. And when they come the new ones, the aligned ones, you do not contort, you do not explain, you do not chase. You simply exist, and that is enough, because now you belong to yourself. Let this be your truth, written not in books, but in the blood of your becoming. Let this be your mantra, I choose me. Not because you are selfish, not because you are cold, but because you are holy, because your life is a temple and your energy is sacred fire, because your heart is not a battlefield and your soul is not collateral, because your gift is not your suffering, it is your light. Let them rise or let them fall, but you will arise, you will rise in silence, you will rise in truth, you will rise in power, you will rise in the memory of who you were before the world told you to forget. And in your rising, you will teach others, not by saving them, not by bleeding for them, but by being the one who walked through fire and did not burn, being the one who said no and meant it, being the one who remembered their name and never forgot again. This is the end of the performance. This is the beginning of embodiment. This is the great turning, the great return, the great liberation. You are not here to carry them. You are here to carry you. And that, my dear one, is the only salvation this world has ever needed.